I think a key dynamic is around the employer, around organizational culture, and really understanding that yes, roles will change. Everything that happens within an organization will change. But the relationship between the workplace and the worker is the key dynamic that has to change.
We're figuring this out as we go. We're essentially redefining the paradigm. It's transformative in the way we apply ourselves.
And I think a lot of young workers coming into the system who haven't really ever understood that office culture, quite somewhat crave to have that connection. But I think it's probably blended with work from home as well. Certainly that need to be in the office every day is perhaps not there.
I think devising that interaction model of how the human interacts with the AI is one of the key roles going into the next couple of years. It's defining that scope of influence. How much is okay, how much is not? How do you direct? How do you monitor? How do you analyze, give feedback? But instead of a human being, it's an AI model you're training to work better with you. We used to do that before. We don't do it anymore. Maybe we can bring it back next.
Yeah,
Maybe.
we can bring
Yeah.
it back. Hello
Yeah.
and welcome. You're listening to Chronicles of the Galaxy with me, Matt, and Olympia. Good morning,
Hi.
Olympia.
Good morning, Matt. I missed you so much, so I'm very, very happy to see you. How are
Missed you
you feeling?
too, Mr. Pod. I'm really well. I'm really well. How are you?
Yeah, I'm amazing. You can't be sad. You're what, 10 days away? Oh my God, we are 10 days away
We are
from,
10
from
days away.
Christmas.
This is it. Oh, it's so close.
Exactly. Do you do advent calendars?
The kids do. I don't.
Okay. Oh, so, why would you? Okay, so I think everybody should do, even if it's not like the branded ones. I think we should like introduce that ceremony into our experience. Like, just like little joys, little bits of wonder leading up to the big day. I mean,
Okay, yeah, better than chocolates for sure.
yeah,
Nice.
exactly. It could be like, I don't know, for Mr. Weasley. I don't know why.
You jumped for Mr. Weasley. Okay.
I don't know.
Oh, that's small.
Well, in my head, when he said it doesn't have to be chocolate, I was like, oh, imagine a little tiny little box with like a nut bolt, like like the from ones like
Okay.
from a car or something.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like, that's your little box, and I'm like, who would enjoy that? That's Mr. Weasley from Harry Potter. So,
That could be deeply personalized. I like that idea. Yeah, yeah.
mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So
Very nice. Oh, it's a spin-off right there.
yes, I have been obsessed with advent calendars, and for however long I've known they existed. I didn't know they existed for a very long time. So even now, if I don't do the branded boxes, I try to do like mini little moments, and more often than not, it's books. I'm just like, okay, well, even if I can't finish this one book in one day, I'm gonna put it in my stack of all of these books that I haven't read yet, that I'm putting for future reading.
I'm sure we did actually once have, maybe we still have it, and it's lost somewhere in storage, but I'm sure we once had like a wooden advent calendar that had little drawers and
Oh,
you
so
could put
cute.
things inside and it allowed you to therefore sort of personalize it a bit. But I don't know what the hell happened to it.
Oh, I love that. Okay, but I mean, okay, so I don't mean to pry on the little boxes in that what sounds like a very beautiful advent calendar. I feel like we should be able to pull out so many of those boxes that we wouldn't be able to finish our episode with what we're talking about today,
True. That is true. It is true.
right?
Would you want to take us into the topic?
Oh yeah, sure, absolutely. Well, if you want to help me with this, because it's so vast. It's so far ahead into the future, that I wouldn't know where to start and where to end. But that's essentially what we're talking about. We're talking about the future as we stand today in 2025 and looking ahead into what that looks like for us as a planet, as human beings, as people involved in living life on a planet that we know and are very aware of what history has done, but I don't think it has informed us going forward. And there's an entire field that does that. So we're talking about the futures today. Does that sound
Yeah,
right?
and I think in particularly also thinking about the future of the workplace
Mhm.
and work as well. That's a particular area that I've focused on. So yeah, and I think it's again it's very easy to get. We've done a number of episodes where we've touched on AI, and I'm sure we'll touch on it today. But also trying to think kind of beyond that and really trying to explore the role of AI and other dynamics in defining our future. So yeah, it's
Absolutely.
an interesting topic.
Exactly, and I, Matt, we did start off with, and that is kind of the kernel that kickstarted our episode for today is that it's a future of work and future of jobs. And honestly, when I started looking into that, I couldn't help realizing that that little cog is connected to everything that we do. And that's kind of why it's like spilled out into all of the different ideas that I do want to talk about. Do you think that that sounds about right, or is that not what the future of work is? Because there are some opinions out there that are different.
Oh, agreed. And I think, like I say, I think AI is sort of shaping our culture and our race at large. But I think it's particularly impacting on the professional domain and really redefining the role of humans and humanity moving forward. So yeah, I think it's a pivotal kind of dynamic that will have sort of reverberations and implications beyond the workplace and almost sort of kind of reshaping the workplace entirely. And I say workplace, I don't even know if that concept will remain. I mean, the workplace itself is already kind of somewhat defunct. So yeah, there's all sorts of dynamics, and I'm sure we'll dig into it.
Yes. Let's get started with an idea of the workplace, because I think even within the span of our work experience, the workplace has shifted dynamically, hasn't it?
Yeah, it really has. I think it's fair to say that the concept of work has always evolved. Obviously, from way back in the day through to today, we've moved from a kind of standard kind of manual labor scenario to the Industrial Revolution, and then running into kind of automation and then obviously into the sort of gig and the creator economy, and then now into the kind of AI. And obviously that's always been about tech. I guess that constant running through all of that change has been technology, whether it's been
Mm-hmm.
industrial machinery or through to apps, and then, as I say, into AI. And therefore, the place of work and the workplace has changed dramatically. And now I mentioned apps, it's almost now in the gig economy, or until recently in the gig economy, everything was handheld, So suddenly that leads to an entirely kind of remote proposition, both in terms of place of work, but also the relationship with the worker and that sort of freelance sort of creator economy setup. So yeah, I think the distance from the kind of the field of work has increased over time, and now ultimately we could be anywhere and work on anything, and particularly when you think about the sort of metaversal kind of implications as well. So if it is something physical, that could still be performed somewhat kind of remotely or virtually. So other than the very functional roles. If it'd be difficult to be a gardener from afar, but yeah, certainly that distance is a key dynamic. What are your thoughts?
It's the key word for me there is distance. And I hear what you're saying, but to me, in a way, if we look at all of the different, like the broad spectrum of evolution that work has had in the industry, in the industrial revolution, and for the most part of the 20th century so far, it's people have been going to work. You went to an establishment, you went to a very certain building, you had the fixed 9 to 5, 8 to 4, 7 to 3, whatever timeline that people went to work and they did their work and they came back home and they had a home life. And I think event maybe there was during that time when commute kind of got harder, or it was it was blistering heat, or there was a lot of snow and people were traveling and thought, hey, wouldn't it be great if the work came to us? I think that's what tech has done. I think tech has essentially brought work to the people. So this way, now you're instead of you going to one place and doing the work, you get to work from anywhere. And what that has done is it hasn't actually freed the time, and it hasn't helped with the work life balance. All that's done is it's made human resources available to companies like they're full-time machines on rent. It's like we take you out for the 10, 12 hours, 14 hours, 16 hours, whatever work days that you have. You can do it from anywhere you want, and we'll give you some time off to, like, like a bio break. You can sleep, eat, rest, do it within the 5 hours, and that's your day done. So to me, the distance actually is the key part there, where technology has enabled us to be on and connected constantly to the money making machine that organizations are. And it sounds harsh and critical, but the idea of remote working to me was the freedom, was the part that it enabled us to have a little bit of home life, a little bit of work life, and find a balanced mix of that. And I think that's what's concerning to me about how most of the bigger companies, like, if you look at the FANGs of the world, in any industry, they are insistent on bringing their workers back into the workplace because that gave them better control on the workers doing their work, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think, as you say, when in sort of work spilling into the home domain, it did obviously blur those boundaries. I remember seeing a lovely cartoon right at the kind of the peak of COVID of a guy sort of turning to his wife and saying, "Darling, remind me, do I work from home or do I live at the office?" And it is kind of it did get confusing though,
Yeah.
and I guess that distance was once a deliberate thing. It was a fact of life, and now perhaps we need to all work to kind of almost put that distance back in place, whether that's more emotional distance or a form of less tangible distance to really try and put a divide back between home and work. But you're right. I mean, I think companies have realized that now to truly oversee and control that resource, they do want to pull people back into the workplace. And I think a lot of workers, young workers coming into the system who haven't really ever understood that office culture, quite somewhat crave that. I think the sort of the latest generation of young people coming out of schools and universities do want to have that connection, but I think it's probably blended with work from home as well. Certainly, that sort of that need to be in the office every day is perhaps not there.
Do you think this has anything to do? This will have any kind of impact in shaping the work of tomorrow? I mean, we are talking about the future of work and future of jobs, and as transformative as the year 2025 has been. Did you get a chance to look at the World Economic Forum report that they put out earlier this year, the jobs report?
I don't think so. Tell me.
They so there was I mean it was a long report, and it had some great wins, it had some questionable details as well, but the thing that stood out for me from there was by 2030, which is in less than 5 years, 40% of today's jobs that exist will be made redundant. 40%. That is that seems ridiculously um dark, to think that there is that 40% of our existing workforce is going to be forced into redundancy, not retirement. Not, they're just going to be out of jobs. And do you think this whole movement back into the workplace and movement away from the workplace, this very blurred line between work and home, is contributing to that in ways we can't even imagine?
Yeah, I would imagine so. And I think particularly paired with AI trying to kind of swoop up and the sort of lower level tasks, that does take out kind of a layer of the workforce, I guess. But it's easy to talk about this being a future concern. I suspect it's a concern right now. I think
Hmm.
it's already happening. And we've obviously seen some big announcements across some of the big tech companies where they've made redundancies, driving efficiencies, etc. And they've quoted AI as one of the reasons. But I also, I already know a number of top kind of graduates that have graduated in the last year or 18 months and haven't been able to enter this sort of so-called workplace. I think it's particularly happening in the UK, and I think that's partly sort of a slowdown economically, but also I think just a lack of confidence generally in companies and hiring entities in the future, and they're trying to understand what the implications of all of this will be, and therefore not taking on the same level of graduates that they used to. And I think we touched on this in a previous pod where there's going to be a skills gap though. If you don't recruit into the company at the
Hmm.
lowest level, then what happens in 5, 10 years? You're going to end up with a sort of middle layer that's just missing. And I think that's going to be an implication for companies. But it is already an issue, and I think it's obviously only going to get worse. But I do think it's a challenge, and there's not as many roles out there today, and there's not as many people confidently recruiting into the base of their business because they're not really sure about the future of that business, so they want to just wait and see. And lack of confidence is a huge issue. It's what impacts markets in general, and I think it's impacting the employment market for sure already.
Do you, I mean, I know we've touched on AI before, and do you think in this prediction that we're looking at, and that AI has a role in, is it lack of confidence in AI, or is it lack of confidence in the humans that are now graduating and they're not able to keep up with AI? Or let's unpack that a little bit more.
Well, for me, I think it's both, but it's less maybe confidence, more kind of lack of clarity, and it's just not fully understanding the implications. So waiting to see how it pans out. I think people understand that AI shouldn't completely replace humans, and it should really be trying to augment human capability, but specifically how and in what ways that will manifest within those particular businesses, it's just not clear. And at the same time, people are still kind of playing with AI, but they've yet to really embed it into businesses. Businesses also, whilst they love to drive efficiency, they're not particularly efficient. So they're kind of unclear about how to. It's not like there's an obvious playbook about how to connect AI and its capabilities back into an organization. And people are doing that with impact today. It hasn't really happened yet. People are playing with it, but it's not mandated and it's not embedded. So I think it's still taking shape. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, that's exactly what I've been seeing, Matt, is that the playbook is being written right now, and I think as personally, that's what I've been focused on myself, because I've taken the year trying to figure out starting at the beginning of the year. I started going all out in trying to explore what are my different career options, because I'm at that kind of mid-career defining stage in a very transformative year, and I wasn't sure how I could best apply myself. And one of the thought processes that I've constantly found myself coming back to is, how do I create AI assisted workflows? How does AI feature in assisting and supporting our existing people, the people who already know how to do the things that they do, and apply AI as a tool to do their work better? And it's a weird, like, one of the most recent things that I came across is we're so used to automation and applying AI and just increasing our productivity, that we put humans into like an into our brains into like an autopilot mode. And to me, this is the first time I've ever put it from a design perspective, is to reintroduce friction, is to reintroduce a pause, a beat, to kind of jumpstart the human brain into thinking, wait, do I need to think about this? Is this something that I need to do? Just because the AI is recommending it doesn't mean that I have to do it. So I think devising that interaction model of how the human interacts with the AI is, I think, one of the key roles going forward into next couple of years. It's defining that scope of influence. How much is okay, how much is not? How do you direct, how do you monitor, how do you analyze, how do you give feedback? But instead of a human being, it's an AI model that you're training to work better with you. Does that sound about right? And how
Yeah,
you
that sounds great. And I love the idea of kind of really trying to kind of drill into the relationship between human and AI, kind of master and support. And, because it's easy to say. I mean, in my mind, it's things like, the human drives oversight, creativity, and kind of judgment, sort of complex judgment. But again, what does that really mean? And how does that really work? So actually trying to start to formalize that relationship is interesting. And then you almost get a terms of engagement and a sort of way of working and a clear requirement from on both sides of the fence. But I guess the point is, as AI is always learning, so I guess that would always need to evolve. But ideally, that same level of all those same capabilities around that sort of judgment calls, the creativity piece would remain, but that would just become increasingly elevated. But I don't know, and I think it's really interesting that you're exploring that. I mean, so how have you been doing that? Sort of what have you kind of learned, and what are your kind of findings?
First, the biggest thing that I think that has helped me navigate this space is upskilling myself. I have now gone back to the drawing board, so to say, and started re-engaging with some of the languages that these LLMs are speaking. So one of the first things that I realized is, I don't know the AI models as much as I know it outside of the chat GPT context. I can use it as a chatbot. I can recognize some of its mistakes, and I now know better to check its data, because more often than not, it's about 3 years behind. And that's what I think. If anyone's out there and they're trying to keep up with learning how to apply and use AI, one is experimentation for sure. It goes against all of the things that we've talked about previously in our previous pods about being conscientious. What's conscientious? What's the word?
Conscientious?
Yes, thank you. Conscientious.
Yes.
I can't say it. Okay.
That
Okay.
word? Yeah.
Just being considerate about
There we go.
how,
There we
yes,
go.
yes, exactly. Being considerate about how much we're experimenting with AI, how much we're running the tools, what we're using them for. I wouldn't do the Ghibli trend, but I would, because it's a part of how we need to adapt ourselves in going forward in the world. So I've been trying out a lot of the tools, trying to figure out which one works best, what are their strengths and weaknesses. And obviously because these models are trained on specific data sets, there are some things that they can do well and some other things that they're not so good at. So learning to differentiate that. And then the second part is upskilling myself, which is learning a little bit about SQL, Python, some of the coding technologies, coding languages that are out there, but also white coding and web designing. And so it's honestly just throwing yourself into the practice of using these tools in the way that suits you best. Now, it might sound like a lot of common sense here, but honestly, if we think of, we focus on the fear of AI replacing us and our jobs, I think that's the wrong way to go about it. Because this is the same thing that happened, this has happened over and over through decades. You know, when masonry people who worked in those workshops first found out the tools and the machines, I'm sure they got scared. And there was a little bit of hesitance in trying to adapt it, but that the argument here is to adapt the technology to benefit yourself before someone else who is able to do that replacement. The fresh graduates that are coming in, I think they're very well placed in trying to distinguish themselves as people who know these inner workings better than the experienced people who are out there already working for many, many years in a non-AI world. I think that's a huge advantage that I would hope these recent graduates see. Given that they are much more closer to the experimental nature of the technologies as they were being built. So they've had the chance to play. They've had the chance to push and really test and capitalize on how to work these models, which I think is a huge advantage, which will be hard for people stuck in their years of experience to adapt to very quickly.
Yeah, I think that's a really positive way of looking at it. So almost flipping it on its head and saying, actually, this is one, AI is a huge opportunity, and two, if you're entering the workforce, having not kind of been shaped and primed in a non-AI world, do you have the opportunity to kind of embrace this and see it as a kind of as a superpower that you bring with you into the world of work, completely free of any kind of preconceptions and misconceptions, and can just can kind of almost supercharge your output and supercharge your kind of proposition as an employee, paired with these tools that are intuitive and part and parcel of how you show up at work. So yeah, I think that's a cool thought. Do you think there's people out there, is that something that you're kind of priming yourself for now? Is that something, do you think there's people doing the same? Do you think this could be a bit of a movement in the workforce today and moving forwards?
I would think that is the case. I mean, there's obviously going into next year. If we wanna, I know we're talking about the future, and the future, the very immediate future, there are some growing pains, and there are inherent circumstantial situations that will play against. So people who started ahead in the race will stay ahead in the race, and the ones that started further behind will have some trouble catching up. So I don't wanna discredit that part of the experience. But yeah, so if you think about how you're preparing yourself for the future, it's an experimental process. We're figuring this out as we go. We're essentially redefining the paradigm. It's transformative in how we apply ourselves, and to discount it would be foolish. To let it get away from us would be equally risky. So this is the only option really, and I think people are going to pick it up by themselves, where they start experimenting and contributing, and the ones who are now experimenting with the freedom of not having metrics to report to, not having milestones to reach to, not having very predefined conditions of success. They don't have those things limiting themselves. So honestly, the sky's the limit. So to be able to push that far, I think will create some of the most spectacular results. I mean, if you think about, isn't this kind of like 20 years ago before Google came out? We didn't have a search engine back then, right? The internet was there, the indexing was happening, but these were a couple of people in a garage trying to figure out, hey, can we do this better? And how, you had the ideologies, they had the space to say we will not be evil before capitalism took that away. So I think it's a golden opportunity. I don't know what are your thoughts on it, man?
Well, I'm just excited to hear you frame it that way. I think it's nice to find a positive take on this, because I think too often we get caught up in the fear, confusion, and concern around AI, and it's just nice to take a confident positive take on it and say, actually, no, this is a golden opportunity, and to hear how you are not just framing it that way, but also approaching it that way. So I hope more people are doing that. I feel a little bit like I'm sort of somewhat past it to be able to do that myself. But at the same time, I'm trying to embrace AI for sure. But I am one of the fearful ones because I'm 25 years in the workplace, without it. So I kind of feel like it is more challenging for me to kind of embrace and embed these skills. But it's great to hear of someone at your point, where you're not at the beginning of your career, you're probably midway through. But you recognize that you have this opportunity to embrace this and almost take things up to another level. So I think it's really encouraging and exciting, and it's good to hear kind of positivity around this change because it is changing. We have to embrace it. So it's great to do that in a proactive fashion.
As someone who's seen you master Figma, I'm very certain that this is not something that is past you. Because, I mean, okay, so innovation and experimentation cannot exist in a vacuum, and they do happen within the business. But there has to be direction for it. There has to be space created for it to be innovative, to take risks, to fail. If you're not gonna fail, if you're not gonna test things and like fall flat on your face, you're not gonna learn to get back up and try new things. You wouldn't mind coming along with me into the part that has led me to this perspective. It's this emerging field of design discipline called speculative design or critical design. It's been around for a while now. It's been formalized as a discipline by Anthony Dunn and Fiona Raby. So they're part of the Dunn and Raby studio established back in the 90s in London, and they started exploring all of these different technologies and the emerging technologies from a future speculative perspective, not really focusing on how design is applied today, like as a problem to solve, as a product to create. They started experimenting with objects and exhibitions, trying to create a dialogue and trying to create conversation around why and if things need to be the way they do. And part of that is by creating design fiction and looking far ahead into the future. um, way back in 2013, they did a whole exhibition on what is luxury, and it's relevant because today we can identify luxury as being able to have the time, being able to afford to disconnect from social media. And this is what they said all those years back. That was their exhibition. They did another series on the future is now, where they looked at 100 different products that had this kind of speculative nature of what that could look like in the future. And one of their experimentations was about human foragers foraging for biophilia. And so a lot of the speculative work that they did as experimentation to create that kind of dialogue, we now see coming forward and coming true. So if we look at digital futures as a tool to apply ourselves, what do you think will be some new jobs? If 40% of the workforce is made redundant, can we then argue that 40% new jobs will be created, that people will be doing, arguably, and what those roles could be?
Well, that's a good point because you're right. It's very easy to focus on the loss and what's missing. And I mean, like as a stupid parallel, but when I switched to vegetarianism, I tried to do so within an English kind of palate and an English food system, feeding system. So you kind of we're in a culture where you have kind of meat and two vegetables on your plate. If you take the meat away, then suddenly you've just got two vegetables and a whole. And I got very kind of obsessed of how do I replace that whole, and just very focused on the loss of the meat rather than actually reimagining what I ate and realizing I could have stir fries or curries or whatever. And then I simply didn't notice that there was no meat there. And this is, I guess, so excuse me for the kind of random metaphor, but this is, I think, the opportunity is to say, let's not think about the 40% roles lost. Let's rethink the dish of future employment and think about what roles we need to create to be able to absorb and cater to this opportunity. So you're right. I'm sure there are 40%, if not 50%, and this is the thing. There may be an actual gain here in terms of opportunities. What those roles are, I don't know. But I do think it's interesting to think, actually, no, probably the flip side of this is there will be greater opportunity. There will be greater roles. They're just roles that we don't know yet and we can't imagine yet. But as you say, if you take a stance of kind of design fiction, as you mentioned, then perhaps start asking what if there'll be roles that manifest and actually excite and inspire and move the workforce and these whole enterprises forwards.
Speculative design uses what if a lot. It's a lot of what
Mm.
ifing
Mm. I
in
love what ifing. I
it
love
is
what
a lot.
ifing.
But okay, in trying to look at some of these roles, because I have been thinking about it. I don't have perfect answers, but some of the things that I thought were happening and they suddenly are becoming true at the end of 2025 here, which between you and I, between on our pod here, we've been asking a lot of if we should be doing certain things just because we can do it now. Like, if just because it's technologically feasible now, we shouldn't stop to ask why and what if and how. So I think this future's critical thinking and reasoning behind technology is one of the roles that I see growing more and more. It's a part of my strategic design practice where you kind of figure out who are you building things for, why are you building it, and what are the implications of it. And I don't think it has been applied enough outside of a money making concept for business. And I think going forward, as more, not to side get sidetracked here, but did you see the ban on social media for teens in Australia,
Yes. Yeah, yeah.
and the Danish government taking it up as well?
Yeah, and I think Australian teens, I say that like they're like a club, but I think they're also looking to take legal action in response. Is that right? I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know how and how that might take shape, but yeah, it's an interesting, but it's a key dynamic in terms of that. Yeah. Sorry, carry on.
No, but that's it's the exact kind of response that would elicit from such an extreme measure. We've been cautionary and about letting teens have social media and having its influence on it, but everyone knows that something as addictive as social media, you can't put a prohibition on it and expect it to go away. There are going to be workarounds that are probably stronger. Anyone who's
Mm.
downloaded torrents will know that. So, and I think that's where something of the kind of reasoning that we've been doing would come in and ask, okay, is this ban necessary? And what is another way? What is a social programming? What is an infrastructure programming that we can introduce to keep our teens safe while they also explore social media for themselves?
Yeah, agreed.
So you yourself, I mean, think about it, Matt. You have been in, like you said, in 25 years of experience. I know your stories of so many brands that you've helped create. Growing up, was brand strategy a thing that you were aspiring to be? Was that ever part of your aspirations, of your career aspirations? I mean, if you go back to 10-year-old Matt, what were those things that little boy wanted to do, wanted to be?
I think at that age I always wanted to be a vet.
Okay,
Uh,
yeah.
so
Uh-huh.
yeah, a little different. But then I realized that you had to. I mean, I thought basically as a 10-year-old that being a vet meant playing with animals all day.
That's
Um,
adorable.
yeah, but of course, sometimes you have to do things like put them down or operate on them or, insert your arm up its. Anyway, so, when that got real and messy, I realized that wasn't for me. Yeah, it's interesting how these things evolve. And I guess, I mean, that's the thing is, I guess careers will always have arcs to them. And that's again a constant that won't change. And again, AI could play part in that. But yeah, brand strategies. I mean, the thing for me was just human behavior and just finding the emotional response to brands, and also the kind of physical response commercially to brands was really fascinating, and that's what kind of pulled me into the world that I'm in and the world that we're both in, I guess, around that kind of like the idea of that sort of brand design and design intersection between kind of product and consumer. Yeah, sadly, the dream was always to be a vet.
It's not too late, is it? Because I
I think
think
it probably is today because I think you have to take about 8 years to train.
not with
Um,
AI,
that would
with
take me into my mid to late 50s, and then
it
I don't
is.
know. It
It's
seems a little tardy.
Do you remember that article I sent you by Leah Zaidi? She's an award-winning futurist from Toronto, and she created it's an old article now. It's a Medium article about some job adverts for jobs of the future.
Yes, yes, I do remember that. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So I
yeah.
mean, we can go through the list because I think those are some great examples, especially starting with the first one that that can come close to your 10-year-old aspirations. The first job she posted about was recreationalist. Um,
Oh,
no,
that sounds good.
that's a that does sound good, although that's not what she said. She said recreation.
Oh, that's different.
Although, I mean, we can come up with what the definition of a recreationalist is. What is a
Yeah, yeah.
recreationalist, Matt?
Well, I mean, yeah, that sounds like an absolutely vital pastime.
Mhm,
I mean, I guess it's not far from just being the guy that runs activities in a resort, but yeah, that
mhm.
doesn't sound quite so
A wellness consultant who
high-flying.
kind of figures out what your body needs in your AI and digital world and
Hmm.
prescribes those to you. Like,
Hmm.
like go to Sweden and you need a month of
Yeah,
Sweden.
describing Sweden's so cool, but yes,
Mhm.
absolutely.
She writes, as most species die off or reach the point of extinction, we may turn to a combination of sequencing, 4D printing, and AI to recreate what we've lost.
4D
Um,
printing, interesting. Okay.
mhm.
That's like when you
um,
go to the cinema and they have those 4D movies when you get sprayed in the face and
I I
your ch
hate this
your
so
chair
much.
throws you around. How do they? So a printer version of that.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
Okay.
Well, that's what it is. Years ago, when Star Wars predicted that we'd be, talking to each other on like headphones or like microphones with our headsets on, we didn't know that was going to be real, but that was part of it.
There we go.
Um, Another role that she talks about is reality rehabilitator, as fantasy and virtual worlds that come together,
Hmm.
where, instead of the alternative to like the real democracy-less worlds.
So
I
people
would,
would go for you go to like reality rehab, be like an
yeah,
intervention for your friends.
exactly. And so, I mean, honestly, I mean, I can send you the link again, and I can link it for our listeners as well.
Awesome. Yeah, please do.
But the we don't know what we don't know, right, about the future. So the roads that we don't know about and can exist it's honestly beyond well, beyond the capabilities of our current imagination. Um, but it is on us as the human beings in existence right now, to make sure that it's aligned. So I think one of the other things that we can do in this moment to prepare ourselves for the future is to take care of how we want the future to be. And Anthony Dunn, from the Design Speculative Future, they have a book called Speculating Everything. It's a little bit more than a decade old now, and so they talk about all of the different projects and experiments that they've done. And he was at a university program talking about the book, and he says this line that his design practice is about changing our attitudes to fit within the limitations of the planet, re-engineering ourselves according to the limitations of the planet, which I think is such a great space to be in if you have options you want to explore today. I think so far our technology and all of the advancements that have been at the cost of the
Yeah.
planet.
Yeah, you're right. So I was just going to say, because it's really interesting because you're right, because I think technology has made us think we've got kind of limitless opportunity and therefore we have impacted on the planet. Whereas if we come at this to say, yes, technology gives us limitless capability, but there are limits within the world that we live, and therefore that should be the frame. That should define the outer limits, and therefore we should work within that frame to ensure that yes, technology drives things forwards, but always within the capabilities, within the capacity of our world, and not at its expense. I think that's really powerful.
Yeah, and I mean, if this year has shown us anything, is that normal people like you and I, even if we are part of the tech world, and even if we're part of creating brands and organizations and businesses, we see the distinction between us and the tech bros out there who don't seem to value nature and her gifts in the world. They think the hustle culture is real, and abandoning the planet for a better one or for a newer one to again exploit is part of their roadmap. And I think the time is right to create an alternative to those tech bros.
Well, those tech bros are literally living proof of they kind of almost the concept of I can, therefore I will brought to life. Yeah,
Mhm.
and just as you said earlier in the pods, just because you can doesn't mean you should. But they literally they just want to explore whatever they can do, and they can kind of do anything. So why not do it? So they're the antithesis of everything you're talking about. And yeah, this is a really nice thought of kind of really trying to take the capacity of the world and use that as a filter for what should be done moving forwards. I
Yeah.
wanted to touch. I know that we're probably wrapping up soon. I just wanted to touch on a kind of key dynamic because we talked a lot about sort of the functional capabilities of AI, improving the functional capabilities of us, and the future of work being somewhat reinvented by technology again, yet again. But I think a key dynamic is around the sort of the employer, around organizational culture, and really, understanding that yes, roles will change, and yes, everything that happens within an organization will change, but the relationship between the workplace and the worker is the key dynamic that has to change.
Mhm.
And it has shifted a lot, obviously, as I mentioned, into things like the creator economy, but it needs to continue to shift because people need to understand that they won't have ownership of their workers. And the employee-employee relationship has to massively evolve because you can't just use financial gain as a motivation, but equally you shouldn't be trying to sort of entrap a workforce. Really that must be much more motivational, much more inspirational, much more mission led
Mhm.
versus sort of function led. And I came across a really nice quote. It's quite long, but I might just run through it. It was
Yes, please.
written by a gentleman called Suresh Dinakran. It was, I think, also a Medium article, and he simply said, "Employment is dead, but work is more alive, electric, creative, and rebellious than ever." And the organizations that get it, they won't be employers. They'll be magnets. Replace hierarchy with fluidity. Embrace outputs over hours. Don't hire people to control them. Hire them to unleash them. Offer meaning. Are we a workplace or a launch pad? Are we building cubicles or communities? Do our people work for us or do they come alive with us? And he references that your people are almost your greatest investors. So, invest in them accordingly and stop, ultimately seeing them as your people. They're people that are there to be influenced and seduced, as it were, and really, and to demonstrate that they can really unfurl their full potential, within your mission. But they'll never be part and parcel of your company, as it were. Does that make sense?
I love that, Matt. I don't know who Suresh is, but I'm keen to find out
He's
what
good,
kind.
isn't he? He's good, and there's a much longer article around it that's beautiful. It's a really lovely piece, and for me, I get it. I feel like that the sort of boss dynamic is dead. I don't see the value of that. Obviously, you need leadership, but hierarchy, I think, is just not so critical. I think there's so much more opportunity inherent in flatter organizations. And like I say, I think large corporates need to start seeing themselves very differently and really start to treat their workforce very differently. Otherwise, yes, you can embrace AI, et cetera, but ultimately, if you don't motivate people to come and be part of your mission, then frankly, you're dead in the water, today and moving forwards.
That is such a great thought, Matt. And I'm sorry I pulled this off into the digital futures. I think I got a little carried away with the future part of the future of work
No,
part.
that was fascinating.
That I completely ignored the employers, and you're absolutely right. And these are it's the other part of the equation that does need to come forward and put up, like you said, magnetic kind of pull, and really put their money where their mouth is, and attract the right kind of people. And as you were speaking, I was thinking of some of the companies that I admire. And they have these exact same things, if you think about Ecosia, I don't know if I'm saying it right, but they are um,
Search engine.
yes, the search engine. All of their employees have equity in their company, so it's their profit is shared across the company, and they care about those people in the exact same way that they care about the mission that their company is on. I can think of REI. REI is the outwear brand company, apparel company, and every winter, yeah, they're so committed to creating for the outdoors and taking their time to reconnect with nature that the entire company takes off, which is amazing. It's Canva has Canva is obviously doing a, yeah, it's a woman-owned company where all of their employees are profit partners, and it's again the same similar model to Ecosia. And it's amazing to think that employers fare better because all of their people are equally invested in this. And the last example that I'll give is Pentagram, a company that I've been obsessed with, the model that I've been obsessed with, where all of their partners, they've had partners incoming over the years as they've grown to really bring in their specialities and grow the business as a whole. And that really does change the employer-employee dynamic instead of in the hierarchical model that it used to be. It's a setting where each of us have their own strength and they're all playing for the same team. I love that. So on that note, though, I think it'll be on us, the people listening
Yeah.
to this episode, you and me, people who have a different vision for the future of the workplace. There are more design founders coming up because the voice of the user, the voice of the customer gets lost to businesses, and the more and more people who have these inclusive, holistic visions for the world step up and create those places, it will definitely attract people. I want to go find out who Suresh is and see what we can do together to create a world and the kind of workplace that he's talked about.
Oh man, and like you say, there's already examples of businesses doing this, so it's not impossible, and those are successful global businesses. They're in different domains, so these things are achievable. It's just a matter of having that mindset, embracing and embedding that through the.
We're gonna have a lot more to talk about this, but for now, that's about it for us, right, Matt, on this?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you.
Thank you for the incredible topic, for the incredible insights into this, and for being my workplace buddy on this. Because it's just no,
Workplace buddies. This
yeah, it is. I mean, you technically did hire me, and so now we're doing this. So I feel
that is true.
Yes.
Expect no checks in the mail, though.
That was definitely what I was not hinting at. But yes, if you guys enjoyed listening to this episode, please do let us know what your favorite thing about your workplace is and what that looks like for you in the future. We would love to hear more thoughts like Suresh and Matt. Thank you so much again.
Thank you, and I loved your kind of future jobs. If people have ideas and thoughts on new roles that are going to appear over time, either powered by AI or not, I'd love to hear those as well. It's a really interesting thought around this sort of the opportunity inherent in all of this change. So,
absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, and we will be back with our first season finale. So join us for our next episode as we wrap up our first season of Chronicles of the Galaxy. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening. Thank you, Olympia.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.